Hi there, this is Love Johar. Thank you so much for tuning into this video and thank you so much for watching this channel. Today in this video, we will try to understand what is risk identification process. I will make you understand the entire risk identification process, and you will also understand what is the exact definition and relative examples for assets, examples for asset evaluation, examples of threats, examples of vulnerabilities as well. You will also understand how to identify assets. You will also understand how to identify asset valuation. You will also understand how to identify threats. You will also understand how to identify internal threats. You will also understand how will you identify external threats. You will also come to basic understanding about how to understand the emerging threats, and you would also understand how you can identify the vulnerabilities. So very important video for you, so please watch carefully. And as always, any questions, please ask me in the comment section. Thank you. So now let us understand what is the risk identification process. So risk identification process is very simple, as you can see. You have to first of all identify assets. What are the different types of assets that you have in the environment, in the business organization where you are working? For the risk assessment process, you have to understand what are the different assets, what are the different threats. You have to identify what are the existing controls in place already. Then you have to identify what could be the vulnerabilities, what could be the consequences if the vulnerabilities are exploited, and then you feed all this information into risk estimation process. So this is a basic layout. Now we will deep dive into all these blocks one by one for you, so that you can have complete understanding. So here, as you can see, a basic definition of asset. Okay, asset, we have already explained different times in the previous videos as well. Anything that has value to the organization, okay, is called an asset. It could be tangible, it could be intangible, it could be in a form of software, it could be in a form of a person who is a CIO or a CFO of the organization as well. Asset could be anybody, okay, any person, any software, any hardware, any server, critical server, anything which has value, okay, could be an asset. Now, how you perform asset valuation and what is asset valuation? So asset worth, what is the worth of the asset? When I say a server is critical, but what is the worth, what is the importance of that server? What will happen if the server will go down? That is called asset valuation, and we will discuss that also. What is threat? Threat, anything that can cause harm to the asset is a threat. Okay, anything, for example, in case of a server, you can say that for the entire data center, you can say that where you have hosted all these servers, the threat could be fire, the threat could be floods. So similarly, for a person, if a person is not in a good condition to work, he's ill, he's not able to work, and he's in a very big position like a CIO or CFO, or even the vice president of a company. So these are the threats surrounding people, surrounding hardware, and in softwares as well. A threat could be a software vulnerability, where somebody has exploited old software vulnerability that can again become a threat. So these are all examples of threats. Again, we will see more in the upcoming slides. So vulnerability, what is a vulnerability? Is any sort of weakness in the design, implementation, operation, or any sort of weakness that can actually help the threat to be exploited. Okay, so vulnerability is unpatched systems. Let's say you have the server which has been exploited by the hacker. Now, how the hacker was able to exploit the server? Because the server was not updated. Server did not have the latest security patches. It was not having the latest security updates. So that's why hacker was easily able to get in. So you have to make sure you do regular patching as part of the best practices. So again, this becomes a vulnerability, which is a weakness. If the server is not patched properly, it will become vulnerability. Now, how to identify assets? Okay, so asset, as I've already discussed, something of value. It could be brand, it could be reputation, it could be intellectual property, it could be facility, equipment, anything, information, your cash, your liquidity, your customer information, personal information related to your clients. It could be your services, your business processes, anything which has value to the organization. Okay. Then you have asset valuation, how you perform asset valuation. Okay, so that you understand what is the value of the asset to the business. And so how you perform that is what will happen, okay, if the asset will go down, if the asset is no longer available. Okay, so you understand what is the criticality of the asset. Okay, what will happen if the asset will not be available, or is not being in a state of confidentiality where anybody can access the asset. Okay, there are no access controls in place for confidentiality, there is no encryption on the asset. So here you can understand what would be the impact on loss of confidentiality, integrity, and availability on the asset. Okay, so any sort of quantitative or monetary value would help you in the asset valuation. Okay, so let's say I'll take an example here. Let's say you have e-commerce website, and in the e-commerce website you have hosted your servers on AWS, and you have two Linux servers, and somehow there is a huge traffic spike on the e-commerce website, and because of that both the servers crash, and as they are not able to take the load of the e-commerce website because of the huge traffic, they are not able to process the request anymore. So now you understand the criticality in terms of financial loss to the business, because let's say if the servers remain down for 2 to 3 days, for those 3 days, what will be the average revenue loss that would happen to the company? Would give you actually a monetary value that you can compare against those two servers, so that it can give you an idea of the criticality of the two servers. So I hope this example relates to you. If you need more examples, please ask me in the comment section. I can give you more examples in written as well. Okay. So after that we have threats. So threat is anything that can cause harm to the asset. Okay, so natural events could be there, any sort of technical failures, any sort of compromise of information, anything could be a threat. Okay, we have already discussed that fire, floods, anything could be a threat. Now threats are divided into two categories: internal and external. Okay, so internal threats mostly related to people, because internal in the organization you have people only. So people, first of all, of course, we are human beings prone to errors. So we make sometimes there are mistakes that we do. So making errors, intentionally or unintentionally, being negligent. Okay, committing theft. Okay, using of new technologies then introduce new security issues without implementing proper change controls in place. Okay, so these are internal threats that can happen in the organization. Any sort of disclosure of the proprietary information of the organization could be again a part of the internal threat. So any key position leaves the organization, or is not available anymore because of any reason, as I've already mentioned. Like somebody who is the CIO or the CFO or the chief person for any position, any C-level position, they leave the company all of a sudden or are not available. Again, a part of the internal threats. So you have to understand these internal threats are very important. You have to keep a note of them. Okay, in the entire risk identification process, all these parameters are equally important. Okay, you have to relate them, you have to understand them, you have to relate them, you have to make sense of why we are doing this. Okay, if that why will not be clear, you will not be able to understand the risk identification process. Now coming to external threats, what are the external threats? Okay, external threats could be anything like theft, espionage, software errors, hardware flaws, supply chain errors, data corruption, any sort of severe weather are all considered as external threats. As you can see, there's a huge variety of them. So again, must be cautious of them, and what would be the impact if these actually materialize. Then you have emerging threats. Some category, this is a new category for threats which are just upcoming. Okay, and how would you recognize them, because these are emerging, these are not there anymore. Okay, you just have to understand them, because these are emerging threats which are new to the environment. Okay, like zero day attacks, these are emerging threats. Unusual activity on a system, all of a sudden system slows down, all these are part of emerging threats, because these are some unusual activities which are happening all of a sudden. Okay, new or excessive activity in the logs, repeated password failure attempts, repeated access logins of users who have already left the organization. Many things could be there, so you have to be cautious about emerging threats as well. Okay, then coming to the identifying the vulnerabilities. Vulnerability, as we have already discussed, a weakness in the design, implementation, operation, or internal control of a process that could expose the system to adverse threats from threat events. Okay, so it's basically a weakness. Okay, already discussed. Lack of physical security could be there. You do not have physical security to the data center. Anybody can walk into the data center and access your servers physically. Is a big loophole. Again, a vulnerability. Network misconfiguration, using the default admin passwords on the network hardware devices, or any software tools that you have for networking with the default credentials. Again, network misconfiguration could result into a weakness, because hackers can guess these credentials easily available on websites. Poor architecture for the network, no redundancy in place, no failovers in place in the network, or traffic interception, again part of vulnerabilities. Applications could be there, power failures, supply chain dysfunctions, all these are part of vulnerabilities. These are weaknesses. Your supply chain is not proper, the vendor is not supplying items properly, and the items which are supplied are not having the recent updates from the OEM. All these things are considered as vulnerabilities. Lack of governance, failure to comply with the recent regulations, all these are part of the vulnerabilities. Okay, so make sure you understand all these vulnerabilities as well, and understand them, make a list of them, because the more you will understand them, the more it will make sense for you. Okay, now in the next video we will discuss about risk factors. What is a risk environment? Risk environment is very important to understand, as well as elements of risk. What are the factors in attack likelihood? All this to be coming ahead in the next video, so stay tuned. As always, any questions, please feel free to ask in the comment section. This is Love Johar. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye bye.